Welcome to Stories from the NNI. I'm Lisa Friedersdorf, Director of the National Nanotechnology Coordination Office. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Rama Podila, Assistant Professor of Physics and Astronomy at Clemson University. Rama, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in nanotechnology?
Thank you, Lisa, for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. So every physics student is blown away by quantum mechanics. Unlike mechanics or electricity and magnetism, quantum mechanics is not directly accessible, but we see so many quantum phenomena every day. And I did my bachelor's and master's in physics, and I was always fascinated by these exotic quantum mechanical phenomena in materials. And that when I say materials, both animate and inanimate. And to a physicist, these nanomaterials are quantum labs. So during my undergrad, I was selected for a summer fellowship at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore in India. And there, basically, I learned how to synthesize single-walled carbon nanotubes. And while we were doing these, electron microscopy, we were fascinated by how there were these thin metal catalysts that were stuck inside the nanotube. And so based on this, I later pursued to study the quantum confinement effects of metal catalysts for my master's thesis at the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. So during this period, I got a chance to attend some talks given by Professor Apparao Rao on Raman spectroscopy. And basically in those talks, I found that Raman of nanocarbon is essentially a treasure trove of quantum effects. And a more exciting thing about it was that it was discovered in India, in Bangalore. And I've been there to the place where it was discovered. So it excited me even more. It added much more excitement. So I went on to do a PhD in physics under Professor Rao at Clemson. And during my PhD, I got a chance to interact with Professor Millie Dresselhaus, who is an expert in Raman of nanocarbons. And we studied how atomic defects and dopants influence properties of nanomaterials through Raman and other spectroscopic tools. We looked at combination modes, time-ordered scattering processes in graphene. And we also did some time reversal symmetry breaking in graphene photonic diodes, but it was all inanimate matter. And I was also interested in studying quantum effects at the nano-bio interface and in general, the quantum aspects of life or biophysics. So I went on to do a postdoc at Brody School of Medicine to pursue nanomedicine and nanotoxicity under Professor Jared Brown, who is now at UC Denver. And then subsequently, I was lucky to get a laboratory for myself as a tenure-track faculty at Clemson, my alma mater, to do some exciting research. And now, our research has mainly nanomaterials at the core, and we branch out into these various interfaces such as nanobio, nanoenergy, nano-optics, etc.
Can you tell us a bit about the projects that you're most excited about right now?
In terms of nanobio, we are exploring quantum effects of life through different experiments. So we study, if you take protein folding, the quantum effects of protein folding are still being studied. At the quantum mechanical level, we still don't know many things about how proteins fold and unfold. And so we study protein folding and unfolding by using nanoparticles as probes, because when a protein unfolds on a nanoparticle, we can track how the electron cloud from the protein and nanomaterial are interacting through a wide range of spectroscopic tools like fluorescence, Raman, and Kelvin probe microscopy or electron microscopy, things like that. So we found that protein interactions are highly sensitive to even atomic defects in nanoparticles, because there is a lot of charge transfer that goes on between the protein and the nanomaterial. And we were able to track these quantum effects in protein unfolding. And by understanding these interactions between protein and nanoparticles, we were able to see how cells respond to nanomaterials. So in fact, we were able to establish correlations between cellular outcomes such as reactive oxygen species production, cytotoxicity, or endoplasmic reticulum stress, that they are very highly sensitive to electronic defects in nanoparticles. For example, same zinc oxide nanoparticle of same size, same shape, but just has a little bit deficiency in oxygen, results in different cellular outcomes because the charge transfer when the proteins interact with this nanoparticle when it goes into the cell is different. So we were able to go from that fundamental level and establish correlations in ultimate cellular outcomes. And in terms of energy research, we work both on energy generation and energy storage. And in terms of energy generation, we focus on thermo and triboelectric nanomaterials. We recently made a wireless triboelectric nanogenerator that is capable of converting waste mechanical energy into electricity, and it transmits it wirelessly. And this can be used to, for example, make a pavement made of these wireless triboelectric generators. And if you're walking on it, as you're walking on it, that mechanical energy can be converted to electricity and be wirelessly transmitted for storage into capacitors or batteries. So, but that's what we did is at a lab scale. And in thermoelectric materials, we are now working on how dopants can be introduced into single atomic sheets like graphene to improve thermoelectric efficiency. And in terms of energy storage, we found some important quantum effects that limit things like capacitance or the total energy that can be stored in a battery or a capacitor. This is because, most capacitors, when you study capacitors, you study parallel plate capacitors with metal plates. But these nanomaterials, like, for example, graphene or carbon nanotubes, these are not really metals like copper or aluminum. So there are a lot of quantum effects that come in, especially quantum capacitance. So we showed how this quantum capacitance affects supercapacitor storage and how we can alleviate that and get better batteries. And we also have been trying to go beyond lithium-ion batteries in terms of lithium sulfur, aluminum ion, and different things like that. And in terms of photonics, we've been trying to do photonic nonlinear photonic diodes because graphene, all these nanocarbons have beautiful, excellent nonlinear optical properties. And so we've been trying to use them to get better saturable absorbers for pulsed lasers or better photonic diodes that could lead to some sort of photonic logic. Previously, these effects were there with materials like Faraday rotators, which need magnetic field and so on and so forth. But here we're able to achieve these kind of effects of non-reciprocal light transmission, that is time reversal symmetry breaking of Maxwell's equations by using graphene and fullerene and things like that. That's what we are doing in terms of optics. And these are the latest projects that we are excited about in our lab.
The projects that you just described clearly span a variety of different disciplines. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to collaborative research and your thoughts on interdisciplinarity?
Sure. Like you mentioned, most of our research is at the interface. That means naturally you have both, say, physics and biology, for example. And it's very important. Collaborative research, I think, is very important for the advancement of nanotechnology. And in addition to just the advancement of nanotechnology, actually, nanomaterials give us these new quantum labs that allow you to explore other phenomena that are in no way directly related to some nanotechnological application per se. But for example, like protein folding that I mentioned, we're using nanoparticle as a tool. It's not necessarily a technological application, but it's giving you more insights into how proteins work. So I believe that these new interdisciplinary collaborations have the highest potential to achieve new breakthroughs, like how DNA was a major breakthrough. Like that, I believe that these nanobiointerface, the studies at nanobiointerface, I believe they have such high potential to give us, ability to go further in terms of our understanding of life. And in terms of looking at other effects of nanomaterial in terms of nanotechnological applications, we discovered a lot of things in the lab, but we also need to ultimately translate these to the marketplace. And to do that, we need a lot of collaboration between scientists, engineers, and the industry. And I am at Clemson Nanomaterials Center, which is directed by Professor Apparao Rao, who was my PhD mentor. And so because I have worked with him so closely, it's like we're a part of a family, really. So that helps a lot in that our labs are really right next to each other within the center. And the students, actually, we have students from different disciplines like material science, chemical engineering, bioengineering, physics, chemistry. And it's a great thing that these students get to interact, because I believe that new ideas come out when two different disciplines intersect. So our research depends upon a lot of collaborations. Even in terms of toxicological research, we collaborate a lot with Professor Jared Brown at UC Denver. And these kind of interdisciplinary research projects, I believe, are the key to unlocking the true potential of nanotechnology and translating it to the marketplace.
Can you comment on where you see maybe some of the most significant advancements in nanoscience and nanotechnology, and then also looking forward, what are perhaps some of the most significant opportunities?
I'm a big fan of these Marvel movies, and when we think about these 20 years later, we're always inspired by science fiction in a way, I think. And we have had some inventions that were part of science fiction. For example, if you look at even a movie like Flubber, the automatic robot that's flying around Vivo, the kids can see it as a reality now, right? And so thinking from that perspective, I think there is a lot of fundamental science that we have not understood. I see that is the major hindrance in achieving the true potential, in unlocking the true potential of nanotechnology. So 20 years, looking ahead of 20 years, if we want to achieve these new nanomedicine, nanotherapeutics, or we want to have personalized medicine, or if we want to have better batteries that actually could do something about climate change or things like that, I think there is a lot more to be looked at the nanoscale. For example, in terms of energy, we don't really understand triboelectricity. We know that if you rub a glass rod and a silk cloth together, you get a triboelectric effect, but at the quantum level, we don't understand it. And same thing with some other effects. And these things, I think there is a lot more need to study this fundamental science. And I think that new technological advances in nano can only come from that fundamental science. And I also feel that 20 years later, I don't really see nanomaterials as the solution only for electronic computers or transistors, but I rather see nanomaterials making more impact in terms of composites for lightweight cars or for lightweighting everything, and nanomaterials in medicine. I see that these would probably be the most important future directions for nano as such, rather than electronics, in my opinion.
So you mentioned your work with students a couple of times now in your earlier comments. Can you share advice that you might give a student that expressed interest in pursuing a career in nanoscience?
The main thing that I would like to say is, for students, it's most important to be open-minded, I think, because it's very easy to pigeonhole ourselves. For example, I see that grad students like to sometimes, they get into these smaller subfields. For example, somebody who is working in condensed matter physics or nanomaterials may not think about astrophysics, really, right? But if you look at it, that fullerene was essentially discovered by an astrophysicist in a way, right? The biggest thing to note here is that nanotechnology is a platform. And there are so many things you can study effects like, for example, somebody could study white holes in nanomaterials by using nonlinear optics, something that's completely astrophysical. Or somebody could use nanomaterials for curing cancer or as a drug for some other disease. So nanomaterial itself is a platform. So the advice that I have for students is that students need to be open-minded, and they need to have, it's no more of just knowing physics or just knowing chemistry. It's going to be interdisciplinary, and the world has changed a lot in that regard. But I think the students need to be even more open-minded and should not hesitate to read some equations and learn the fundamental science without hesitation. Because I do see that many students often hesitate about nanotechnology when they look at the quantum part, and they don't want to get into that. But I think I would like to encourage students to be open-minded, because nanotechnology is a wonderful platform that can provide a base for doing research in any direction, be it bioengineering or chemical engineering or physics, chemistry. biology or astrophysics. So there are a lot of possibilities there.
And I just want to thank you again for taking the time to talk with us today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
In closing, the only thing that I would like to appeal to the general public is that every time you hear something about a new advance in nanoscience, in addition to reading the news article, I urge you to also read the original scientific article so that you can be better informed.
Thank you for joining us today for the stories from the NNI. If you would like to learn more about nanotechnology, please visit nano.gov or email us at info@nnco.nano.gov and check back here for more stories.